In Matthew 16, Yeshua told Peter, "On this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." What is this rock that Yeshua said he would build his church on? And what does he mean when he says the gates of hell will not prevail against it? What are the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and who did he give them to? And what did he mean when he gave Peter the power to bind and loose? What are the meanings behind these cryptic words? Have you ever wondered what all of this means? Well, this video series will break down this perplexing teaching piece by piece to uncover Yeshua's true message to Peter and his disciples. You won't want to miss a single episode of The Gates of Hell and the Keys to the Kingdom. As you may know, I've studied the weekly Torah portions for over 2 decades, but I've definitely not mastered the Torah by any stretch of the imagination. However, over the years, I've made some connections between what I've studied in the Torah and Jewish sources and the apostolic scriptures, what most people call the New Testament, and I've compiled 3 years worth of insights into a series of books I call the 5-Minute Torah. They're the basis of these videos. I specifically put a limit on how long each commentary was so that each commentary could be read in about 5 minutes. Now, this doesn't count the extra things at the beginning of the video, but if you were to read the commentary, it's at about 5 minutes worth. It's perfect for anyone on a time constraint who wants a brief nugget to chew on related to the weekly Torah portion. It's also great as a devotion for your Shabbat table on Friday nights. So if you don't have a copy yet, be sure to pick up a copy or an entire set. It'll help support this channel, help us to create better content and newer content in the future. Just use the link in the description box below to grab your own copy. Part 1, Upon This Rock. Yeshua asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" His disciples responded by repeating what they had heard. Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. However, Yeshua wasn't interested in the hearsay of others. He wanted to know what his disciples thought, since they had personally experienced his teachings and witnessed his miracles. He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Being the one with the least inhibitions, Simon Peter responded, "You are the Messiah and the Son of the living God." This answer pleased Yeshua, and he told Peter, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." This is Matthew 16, verses 17 through 19. Yeshua's response has been a source of both inspiration and frustration for his followers for centuries. A modern reading of this passage outside of any kind of context almost seems like it came straight from a science fiction or fantasy novel. We have at least 3 components that are foreign to the modern reader: the gates of hell, the keys to the kingdom, and binding or loosing in heaven and on earth. What's going on here, and how are we supposed to understand this strange passage? Well, scholars and laymen alike have mulled over this passage and come up with some unique interpretations and applications over the centuries. What is this passage all about? Many teach that this is a prophecy about the establishment of the church and Christianity. When Yeshua tells Peter, "On this rock I will build my church," it seems to be clear that he is telling him he is about to create the church as a new entity, distinct and separate from the Jews and from the Jewish religion. Some charismatic traditions teach that this passage refers to the power of the believer over the forces of darkness. According to this interpretation, disciples of Yeshua have the authority to not only bind the wickedness that pours forth from the very gates of hell, but also to loose wealth, health, and prosperity for ourselves and others. Roman Catholicism uses this passage to teach that Yeshua gave Peter, and thus his successors, supreme authority to not only interpret Scripture, but to supersede it if necessary. After all, according to the Catholic Church, The Pope is the vicar of Christ, the representative of Christ on earth. But are any of these really what Yeshua was trying to communicate to his disciples? Are any of these interpretations true to the context of this passage or to the religious framework that Yeshua and his disciples functioned within? Let's begin to unravel this passage by first understanding what rock Yeshua intended to build his holy community on. Yeshua begins his response to Peter by saying, "On this rock I will build my church." There's been an argument over the last several centuries over just exactly what or who this rock is. When Yeshua referred to the rock that he was going to build his church on, was he referring to Peter himself or to Peter's declaration of Yeshua being the Messiah? Since the inception of the Roman Catholic Church, Catholicism has maintained that Simon Peter was the rock that Yeshua intended to build his congregation on. After all, the name Peter, Petros in Greek, and the Hebrew equivalent Kepha, transliterated into Greek as Kephas, means rock. And if Yeshua was speaking to the rock when he said he would build his assembly on the rock, then it seems obvious Peter is the object in question. Therefore, Peter is considered to be the first pope. Catholicism backs its claim by the greater context of this verse, particularly its understanding of the keys to the kingdom and binding and loosing that I will discuss in future videos. Since these concepts are in the immediate context of Yeshua's instructions to Simon Peter, it follows that they're connected with the rock upon which Yeshua would build his church. As a whole, however, the Protestant church flatly rejects such a notion. Generally, Protestantism argues that the rock was not Peter himself, but Peter's confession. Yeshua asked him point blank, "Who do you say that I am?" This is verse 15. Peter's response spoke volumes. "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Yeshua's statement seems to be an immediate response to Peter's confession. We know that even to this day, this confession puts Yeshua's followers at odds with the Jewish world as a whole. We believe him to be the long-awaited Messiah, that is, the King of Israel, and this belief commands our allegiance to him, which is flatly rejected by traditional Judaism. In this sense, it seems that our foundation as a community of believers is based on this confession more than the apostle himself. But there's a problem with this interpretation. Although Peter's confession is critically important, it wasn't the first such confession by his disciples. Peter's brother Andrew had actually made this confession long before Peter did and used it as his reason to bring his brother to the Master. In the Gospel of John, we read, he, meaning Andrew, first found his own brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah." This is John 1:41. Also, we cannot ignore the wordplay Yeshua is using in his pronouncement to Peter. In Yeshua's native language, it would have been pretty obvious that he was referencing the name he had given Peter to drive home his message. Remember, Peter wasn't his birth name. He was given the name Shimon or Simon by his parents, but the gospel makes it clear, however, that he was given the name Peter or Kepha by Yeshua, as it says, he appointed the 12, Shimon, to whom he gave the name Peter, James, the son of Zebedee, etc. This is Mark chapter 3, verses 16 and following. Both Peter, Petros, and Kepha, Kephas, mean rock. With this in mind, Yeshua could have been referencing a familiar midrash about Abraham when he gave Peter his new name. An ancient midrash says that God considered Abraham to be the bedrock, the Petra upon which he built his world. It's interesting, and it's a crucial connection because this midrash uses the Greek loanword Petra to describe Abraham as such. Yeshua had intentionally given Shimon the name Peter or Kepha. Why? Most likely as a prophetic symbol that he would one day live up to that name, knowing the responsibility of Yeshua's assembly would rest on his shoulders. With these two pieces of evidence, it appears that Peter's confession wasn't the rock Yeshua was speaking about. In all likelihood, it appears that, at least on this point, the Catholic Church is correct. The rock Yeshua referred to was Peter himself. Before Yeshua's resurrection, Peter was a little rough around the edges. He was impetuous and a bit of a brawler. He was quick to make promises he couldn't fill. He made a lot of mistakes, and most of us can identify with him because of these things. But ultimately, he took up Yeshua's challenge and not only became the apostle to the circumcised, but also the first apostle to reach out to the uncircumcised, to the non-Jew. He became the pivotal junction between Jews and Gentiles in the kingdom of Messiah. He became the rock upon which the community of Yeshua was built. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to look for part 2 of the gates of hell and the keys to the kingdom in the weeks ahead. If you haven't checked out my videos on recommending books to assist you on your spiritual journey, you can check those out right here. Or you can check out the video that YouTube recommends for you right here. Either way, I'll see you soon with another Messianic insight into the eternal Torah of God. Blessings from Minute Torah.